thank you so much for inviting me to speak to you. I did spend some time trying to decide if I say good afternoon to you or good noon, or it's not good morning anymore, but good afternoon I suppose it is. This would be a whole lot easier if I didn't know so many of you out there. Jennifer is nervous as a cat, so bear with me. And we're going to dive right in. Is there anybody out there who has never been in the Strand? Yay, score! How many of you grew up going to movies there before the restoration? Were there any of you here that were involved in the restoration? Yeah, great, I'd love to talk to you. Maybe you guys can come down and walk me around. I'd love to hear some stories. I did grow up here, and I grew up going to movies at the Strand, and I took it very much for granted. I thought everybody had a Strand. I thought everybody had this incredibly beautiful movie theater that seated 2,000 people. But I had a friend that used to go with me, and in those days it wasn't unusual at all for our mothers to drop us off down there when we were 9 years old, downtown. Certainly wouldn't do it these days. But she made me look, and she said, stop, look up, look at the ceiling, look at the babies, look at the cherubs, they're everywhere. Not everybody has this. And so at the age of 10 or 11 years old, I began to realize what we had here in Shreveport and the gift that the Sanger brothers had given to the community. Last fall, our own Bill Joyce stood on the stage of the Strand and described it as a palace of dreams. We know this community is so proud of Bill and all that he's done, and to have him stand on the stage at the premiere of his film, the Louisiana premiere of his film, The Guardians, and give the Strand credit for a lot of his inspiration meant the world to all of us that are involved in the Strand. So to begin at the beginning and give you a little history, there were a pair of brothers in Shreveport. Julian and Abe Sanger were pharmacists in downtown Shreveport. They were fascinated by the flickers of the moving pictures, what we now call films. And they bought a plot of land at the corner of Louisiana and Crockett and got together with another pair of brothers, the Ehrlich brothers. And the Times announced that there would be a 2,500-seat theater built in downtown Shreveport. During construction, that became known as the $1 Million Theater, and it did cost about $1 million to build. In 1925, it opened with an operetta, The Chocolate Soldier, and it became the flagship of 320 Sanger theaters across the South. As far as I know, though, it's the only Sanger-Ehrlich theater. A couple of years later, the Sanger brothers moved to New Orleans, and they sold the Strand to Paramount Publix for about $10 million, which was one heck of a return on their investment. At that point, they built the Sanger Theater in New Orleans, and probably most of you know that it has reopened this past weekend to sold-out audiences after a $52 million restoration. Now, 30 years ago, the Strand was restored with about $9 million. Fun facts. When the Strand opened, it had a full-time orchestra. How many of you knew that? We have a Robert Morton Golden Voice theater organ in the basement. It is the original theater organ of the Strand. Most historic theaters have lost their organs. It's currently not working, but with a little money, I'm sure we could fix that. It has been played since the restoration. It comes with 939 pipes that are hidden behind the cutouts that are over the opera boxes, and a toy box that includes snare drum, cymbal, tambourine, and other things that wouldn't be suitable for a church organ. And this is exactly what differentiated a theater organ from a church organ, and from what I can understand, even the organists were trained somewhat differently. When the silent movies came in during those days, they came in with scores, and the orchestra would play the scores. Sometimes they didn't, and apparently there was a music director that would preview the film and then go through the music library and choose music that suited the way the film felt. And then the orchestra in the pit would play the music. In front of the big mirror in the lobby, there used to be a goldfish pond. It was there until about the mid-40s, and as I understand it, it was removed just to make more floor space. It probably was a mess to keep up with, though. Although the Strand was built fully electric, with such a large public building, they decided, just for safety, They put in brass fixtures all through the building for emergency gas lighting. As far as I know, though, they never had to be lit, but they are still there. The Strand was air conditioned in the 20s, probably one of the first public buildings in Shreveport to be air conditioned. Fans pulled air through ice-cooled water, and I dare say it was the place to be in August in Louisiana. One of the most interesting things I think about the Strand's history was during a time when racial segregation was the law in the state of Louisiana, the Strand was built to accommodate all Shreveporters. There was a separate box office and a separate entrance that led up to a very plain third-floor landing and the upper balcony seats. And those seats in the upper balcony, unlike their brothers downstairs, which were padded, were those very plain wooden chairs with wooden backs that you probably remember from junior high school. During the war years, almost all of the chandeliers were removed, with the exception of the big three, and I'm sure you know which ones I'm talking about. The big main chandelier that hangs in the center and the two smaller ones that hang over the opera boxes. That main chandelier weighs almost a ton. It has 110 lamps in it, although my maintenance guy tells me only 99 of them work because he has to replace them. It hand cranks down, and last fall we did crank it down, and by the way, it comes down a lot faster than I had expected because I was at the bottom of the window like, stop, stop! Almost all of those crystals are individual, and it took us about 3 weeks to get it as clean as we possibly could. Eventually, the Strand edged away from live performances and became the movie palace that most of us grew up with. Today, we can seat 1,600, but we sell 1,536 seats. The original 1925 projectors are still upstairs in the booth. They're the old carbon rod burning projectors that apparently caused so many movie theaters to burn down over the years. But there are boxes of the carbon rods up there. There's a cabinet full of old movie trailers, reels, and other equipment. It's really pretty interesting to go up there and dig around. Today, that projection booth is just used for spot reads. By the mid-1970s, ABC Theaters owned the Strand, and they had decided to shut it down and were probably going to hit it with a wrecking ball. Most of the theaters had gotten much smaller and had moved away from the center of town and were much more like what we know today. Can't imagine fitting 2,000 people in a movie today. But 3 very special people stepped up to the plate. Jim Montgomery, Virginia Sheehy, and Judd Took formed the Strand Partners and got down on their knees and got ABC Theater to donate the land and the building to Strand Theater Corporation, which was the newly formed nonprofit. How many of you remember the Strand is Grand? That was up on the marquee for many years during the restoration. And these 3 people started the monumental task of raising money to begin 7 years of painstaking restoration. The chandeliers were copied from photos. The opera boxes were replaced. Did you guys remember that the upper opera boxes weren't even there? They took them down in the 50s for widescreen films. I had completely forgotten that they weren't there. The original marquee was replicated. When I was growing up, they had the marquee that was up and down that said Strand. Apparently that one is hanging in Vegas somewhere. The exterior was sandblasted to its original facade, and it was restored to look as much as possible like it did in 1925 when it opened, with one exception, and that would be the mezzanine. And that hole in the mezzanine is what we were talking about earlier. Part of the reason it was closed was for mischievous kids just like me who got thrown out for dropping popcorn. It actually opened over the last few rows of seats in the hall. I think they also closed it for noise level reasons and to make more floor space on the mezzanine, because we certainly use that floor space today. But it reopened in December of 1984 to a Shreveport Symphony concert that was standing room only as a performing arts center and the State Theater of Louisiana. Not the Sanger, the Strand is the State Theater of Louisiana, and that's something we can all be very proud of. The Strand's motto is progressive amusement for progressive people, and that is permanently displayed on the side of the building on Crockett Street. Today we're celebrating our 29th season as a performing arts center and presenting touring Broadway shows. 13-14 season is well underway. We're already 2 shows down in what was a 16-show season, which I think is a record for Strand presented shows. Our next show up is Beauty and the Beast. That is the real one. That's the Disney one. And if you guys are planning on bringing your grandkids or your kids, now would be the time to get tickets because we are way down and it's going to sell out. You can get tickets by calling 226-8555 or on our website. You have cards on your table that have your full season on it. 2 days after Beauty and the Beast, this is the one I'm excited about. Rain, which is the premier Beatles show that was on Broadway, will be November 1st. We're bringing in Memphis on November 22nd and 2 holiday shows in December. Steve Lippy is coming back with his Frank Sinatra Christmas show. And we're bringing Shoji Tabuchi and his showdown for Branson. In the spring, we're bringing in Brass Transit, which is the music of Chicago. Sweet Charity, Hello Dolly. Hal Linden's coming to Shreveport, and that'll be a Sunday matinee. West Side Story, Vince Lombardi Story, magician Adam Trent, who does a rock and roll magic show. And closing the season, we'll be doing a tribute to the Bee Gees called Staying Alive. Besides bringing in shows, Broadway shows to the community, we try and be a good neighbor. We have some programs I'd like to share with you. Every year we give about 500 tickets away to underprivileged young people. The Strand has always been an advocate of exposing at-risk youth to culture through theater. And we have relationships with the Caddo Juvenile Court System, Rutherford House, AMI Kids Red River, the National Guard Youth Challenge Program, CASA, and we are wide open to suggestions. You guys feel free to call me anytime if you have a group that you think would benefit by coming to a show at the Strand. And if we can make it happen, we'll help you make it happen. We also partner with national touring companies and the IATSE stagehands for school shows that benefit about 7,500 kids annually. Last year, for the first of 3 years, we were the host theater for the Kennedy Center College Theater Festival. Centenary College was chosen as the home school for 3 years, and they came to us and asked us to be their home theater. We had about 1,200 students and faculty representing a 6-state region that performed, worked with professional guest artists, and were mentored by our professional stagehands. We're also in the planning stages of a series of brown bag lunch concerts that will be held on 4 successive Fridays in July and August. Try and get some local bands up there from different genres. And in the heat of the summer, we're going to invite everybody in at no charge to have lunch in air-conditioned comfort and listen to a little music in the Strand. The Strand is owned and maintained by the nonprofit Strand Theater Corporation. Unlike a lot of historic theaters, it is not owned or largely supported by the city. But we have 3 things that keep the doors open. Ticket sales, which represent 25 to 30% of the annual operating budget. The generous support of individuals through the Friends of the Strand campaign, and corporate support. But it does take all of these 3 types of support to keep the doors open and to keep the marquee lit. The Strand is a grand old lady, and she's got some old lady problems. She creaks, she leaks, she flakes, but she is magnificent. Before a show, when I go down to turn on the air conditioning in the theater, I always ask for a little intervention from the muses that overlook every show, and usually the air conditioning comes on. It has happened that it hasn't right before a show. My very first day at the Strand, Danny, y'all know Danny, right? Everybody knows Danny Fire. Took me down into the basement and introduced me to the boiler. There's a boiler. I'm a girl. I don't do boiler. Apparently I do boiler. I know much more about boilers now than I ever thought I would. My second show, the basement flooded. There was water coming right up to the demo racks. Many of you that are involved in theater know exactly what I'm talking about and how scary that was. Apparently downtown Shreveport was built on an old lake bed, and we have constant water that runs through the basement of the Strand. We have 3 sump pumps that run continuously. And when those sump pumps fail, on this day 2 of the 3 failed, the water starts rising. Last summer we cleaned, painted, built a bar, and transformed a storage space into a special VIP room where our donors and sponsors can come before Strand presented shows and during intermission. And they can have a drink and a little cheese and crackers. It is graced by a mid-18th century Waterford crystal chandelier that was donated by Sissy Levine, apparently in the 70s, and was packed away in a crate. When we opened it, we found it in pieces, meaning not broken pieces, whole pieces. But each piece was wrapped in a piece of paper and numbered, and there were handwritten instructions on how to put it together. So Brandy and I over here started putting it together and got it hung. Later, I found the appraisal on it. That was really scary. Membership at the Chandelier Room begins at the $1,500 level. So we have Friends of the Strands that are members, and also all of our corporate sponsors are members. And all of our members are invited to bring their guests, because we decided that we want everybody to come up there and see it so that everybody will want to be a member. Next season, we'll be celebrating season 30. Our 30th anniversary as a performing arts center. And we're having a special birthday party announcement on May the 6th. We already have the date set. You're all invited. Somehow I'll find a way to get you an invitation when the time comes. Our goal is to have 30 sponsors in place for 30 seasons. So I'm asking all of you to think about investing in Shreveport's history and Shreveport's future by becoming a sponsor of the Strand. And I promise you we'll take good care of your investment. Buy tickets, become a sponsor, join the Chandelier Room, become a friend of the Strand. But get involved. There's no one here who doesn't love the Strand. It's an easy, easy sell for me. So whether you love classical, ballet, opera, rock, comedy, we do it all at the Strand. There's something for everyone. So help us keep the marquee lights flashing and keep the doors open. I go to work every day and I'm never bored. Each day has a new surprise. It's been a blast this past year and a half keeping this treasure up and running for the community. And with help, we can do this for a very, very long time.